Does this opal turn out to be one of the rarest I've ever cut? Watch the whole video to find out. Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're starting with the lucky hat on immediately, and that's because I have the pleasure of cutting this beautiful gem. This opal was up for grabs in a parcel of 2 on my website in my last rough opal sale, and this gem I think is hiding a very rare pattern. You can see when the light shines on it just right, there's a very strong red colour and it looks very linear, which indicates to me that it's probably going to be script pattern or Chinese writing pattern, whatever you want to call it. I know that this field where the opal was mined has a history of producing Chinese writing. Not only that, but also I have seen it produce a red Chinese writing pattern. Now this obviously sold to a customer, they've asked me to cut it, and the fact that I have that chance is phenomenal because not everyone gets to cut a stone with such a rare pattern. So the fact that I can cut it before sending it is just an honor, and I'm very, very pleased that they trust me to do that. So thank you to that customer. You know who you are. I'm gonna go grab a coffee. I'm far too excited to wait any longer. So we're gonna start on really low grits, just because it's a very thin color bar, as you can see, so I don't want to rush and just melt through everything. So we're going to start real slow, real gentle, because this stone is worth it. If the patience pays off and this is a script pattern, I don't know, like, I'll be speechless. If it's over a carat, and it's red script pattern, we're looking at over £1,000 worth of stone. So everyone cross your fingers, get your lucky hats on and all that business. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to start cutting. So we're starting out on the 400 grit wheel. You can see there's those deep red spots on one side of the opal, and I think the 400 is a perfect grit to start with. It takes off just enough for me to be slow and steady, but also starts to eat into those red patches. Our fingers have to be crossed and hope they both come out. It's quite meticulous work, working on such a small piece of rough opal, but considering the pattern that this stone might be hiding, slow and steady wins the race. Moving on to a 600 grit wheel now, and we're tackling the side that doesn't have the red spots. I'm just getting too excited and I need to see what pattern it's hiding. And here we have it. Our hunches were correct. A bright red script pattern stone. It's got a lot of other colours as well, but we're not out of the woods yet. You can see there's a lot of inclusions left in the face. So we've got a lot of work to do, but it's important that we keep that bright red pattern. What a stone this is going to turn out to be. Now that the opal is on a dop stick, it's going to be a lot easier to control. Because it's quite a small stone, the more control we have, the better. And despite what some people might think, I'm going to move to the 3000 grit wheel. Now, I'm going to be at this wheel for a very long time, but it removes material so slowly and keeps a sort of high polish on it. I think it's the right move to make. Because let's say, for example, I started on the 400 grit wheel, the scratches might be too deep to eventually polish out. So I'm just going to have to be patient. Okay, we're taking a quick stop at the moment just to inspect the opal a bit further. Obviously, moving to the 3000 grit was the right idea. Now we have issue number 1. This sand spot here is poking up from the bottom. so it's not going to clear out. I'd have to basically remove that entire part of the stone. This spot, however, right in the top, I think is only sat on top, although the colour bar is razor thin already. I don't really want to leave that in there. It's safe to say that we have a script pattern stone on our hands. Just look at those paintbrush marks in the top right. Now, what I'm going to do is try and remove this grey spot here. I'm going to make it freeform. There's no way I'm going to lose any, I'm not losing any unnecessary colour. Sand spot underneath here will unfortunately have to stay unless I cut that part of the stone out, which I don't really want to do because that's where some of the red sits. I think we go back to the 600 grit and just slowly but surely whittle away at this and see what happens. If it doesn't go, then it doesn't go and it'll have to stay. But it's worth the effort. I have a little bit of colour bar to play with, as you can see, so I'm going to go for it and try and remove it. Now we're really focusing on that large inclusion left in the face. That deep red patch needs to come out if we want to make a perfect stone. Taking a quick stop just to evaluate the progress, and I spoke to the person who obviously owns this opal and I asked them what they wanted me to do. So we had a sand spot in this side here, and obviously we've got this one in the top corner as well. This one doesn't really sit on any colour, so it's not a big deal, we can take that out. This one, he asked me to try and carve it out, which I've made an attempt, but obviously we've now discovered that the sand goes all the way through the colour bar, so to take it out will leave a very bizarre indentation in the side of the opal. Considering we're already taking this out, it just makes sense just to chop it all off and leave just the side. This sand in the bottom corner we have no choice but to leave. It sits right on top of the best pattern. If I can find, there we go. If you see that red script pattern there, it sits right on top of the sand, and it's smarter just to leave it in there for viewing purposes. Obviously if we take it out, we're just starting to really just butcher a stone that, sure, it has its imperfections, but the chances of a stone forming like this, and I'm talking red script pattern as bright as this, the chance of a stone like this existing is very small. So to get rid of it for the sake of a perfect gem when the person who owns it isn't that bothered, I think would be a shame. So we're leaving that in. We'll take this side in and we'll end up with a stone that sits about there, and I'm not going to make it a perfect oval because again we're trying to maximize the amount of the stone that's kept. So we're just going to take those sand spots out the side. It's a real shame that we have to lose so much of the stone, but honestly we have no choice. And this is one of the pains that comes with opal cutting. Sometimes you have to make a decision and you have to take actions that you don't really want to take, but it's all in the pursuit of greatness. So it's now time to polish the stone, and thanks for sticking around and watching this video because it's turned out to be an absolute top gem. Now there are some inclusions left in the face, but I'm going to explain that all now and my thoughts and feelings behind the whole opal. So here we have the final stone. As you can tell, it weighs 1.39 carats, and it's just phenomenal, really. You can see it's got that strong, bright red script pattern that runs along the left-hand side and bottom-hand side of the stone. Got a bit of a rolling flash of green going from right to left. A little bit more script there in the bottom, and obviously just a bit of flagstone along the top. But all in all, it's got red all the way to blue on the colour spectrum. It's got colour from all angles, and most importantly, that bright red flash. And that red is a 5 out of 5 brightness. Just, it's really, really strong, especially in person. Now, in terms of the value of the stone, there are some points of devaluation I need to point out. First and foremost, the most obvious thing is this sand spot in the side. Now, I've left that in, and there's a reason for that. If you give this stone a bezel setting or a rub over setting, the bezel is going to cover that sand spot. And let's say it covers it to there. It hides the sand spot, but also maximises the amount of red we have in the stone. If I was to cut that sand spot away, all the way in, and then we have a rub over setting, it eats this distance, it eats this far into the stone, and we're losing a massive portion of the red. So by leaving the sand in, yes, it devalues the stone, but it allows us to play with the setting and maximise the amount of colour we're keeping. We have this sand spot in the side, again will be hidden by a bezel, but devalues the stone, and you can see this almost smudge looking mark towards the top of the shape. I tried to get as much of that out as I could. As you can see, there's absolutely no colour bar to play with anymore. I'm surprised there's still colour showing up here, considering there isn't really a colour bar we can see anymore. So for the sake of taking that out, the colour gets a lot weaker, and it wouldn't be good for the stone. So we're leaving it in. Likelihood is it's actually in the potch underneath and is showing through the colour bar, so to remove it would just mean to get rid of all that colour. Other points: it's a freeform shape, and the dome isn't even. That's because of all the inclusions that I had to tackle. So that's a long list of things that would devalue the stone. Regardless, the positives are it has red all the way to blue on the colour spectrum, a brightness of 4, I would say 5 because at certain angles it is very, very bright, like here. However, as it goes with opal, if you have a brightness of 5 but you have to find it in the direction, it's actually a lower brightness. So we're going to say a brightness of 4. It has most obviously script pattern, which is bright red, which increases the value a lot. It's a very rare stone. Stones like this don't come around very often. In terms of value, it's hard because it's very dependent on who's going to be buying it. Commercially, I'd say maybe around £700 to £800 for the stone. However, if there's an opal enthusiast who wants a very, very rare opal, and very rare is obviously from the script pattern, which is a very rare pattern, in combination with red and such a brightness, I think you could argue £1,000 a carat, which puts this at around £1,400. It's expensive for a small stone, but it's definitely worth it. It's one of those stones that comes around once in a lifetime. So to the person who bought this, congratulations. You've got what some would consider a collector's stone.